First responders say more and more calls involve mental health or substance use, and the goal is to make sure those situations don't automatically end in force or jail. Our Cassidy Fury attended the last day of a 40-hour crisis intervention training that took place in Jackson County.
Crisis intervention training is a 40-hour course covering de-escalation, officer wellness, substance use disorder, and mental health, while building relationships between agencies that often respond to the same calls.
Nationally, we believe about 20% of all dispatch calls have to do with some sort of mental health crisis. So what we want to do is, equip officers with better tools in order to effectively deal with those situations.
CEO of First Choice Services, Lotta Menon, said the biggest impact can be what happens after the classroom, when responders know who to call and where to take someone who needs help.
To me, the number one thing that comes out of this is that we bring folks together from different sectors. So we've got first responders, behavioral health providers, peers in long-term recovery, and we connect them up. So these are the folks in the community who actually are working historically separately sometimes, and just by working together and knowing better what each of the players in the system does and what services they offer, we see amazing results just from that.
For those attending, the training is also about changing mindset, slowing down, listening, and recognizing the underlying issue may be behavioral health.
Just the approach. They've taught us how to speak with people in crisis. 30 years in law enforcement, you just feel like you can step in, take over, and a lot of times that's not going to work. Just taking the time to sit back and listen to someone that's in crisis can do much more than coming in and trying to control the situation.
Mike Pfeiffer, Crisis Intervention Team Coordinator for First Choice Services, said one of their hopes is that what's learned here translates to safer outcomes for everyone involved and more people getting routed to treatment instead of jail.
And it's lowering rates of use of force, it's lowering incarceration rates, it's really helping our communities and our police departments and safety, not for just the first responders, but for the people that we're serving.
Organizers say these trainings are held around the state based on community requests, and they're encouraging agencies to keep building local partnerships so help is available before a crisis escalates. In Jackson County, I'm Cassidy Fury with WTAP News.